The golf ball was still rolling when I realized the woman standing beside the clubhouse wasn't there to watch the game. She was carrying a worn golf bag over one shoulder, looking nervous enough to turn around and leave. And when she finally looked at me, I saw something in her eyes that had nothing to do with golf. I just didn't know yet that one simple request from her would change the way I understood friendship, forgiveness, and second chances. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, hope, compassion, forgiveness, and second chances can change a person's life, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. It truly helps these stories reach people who may need them. It was a warm Saturday morning at a quiet golf course outside Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was playing my usual weekend round with my best friend. We had been friends since college, the kind of friendship that survived bad decisions, failed relationships, job changes, and years when neither of us had enough money to pretend we knew what we were doing. That morning, Caleb was laughing about an embarrassing story from our 20s when his younger sister, Hannah, suddenly appeared near the first tee. I hadn't seen her in years. The last time I remembered her, she had been a confident young woman studying to become a physical therapist. Now she looked completely different, not physically, but emotionally. There was a tiredness in her face that made her seem as though she had been carrying something heavy for a long time. Caleb greeted her warmly, but I noticed the hesitation behind her smile. She explained that she had recently moved back home after losing her job and going through a difficult breakup. She said she wanted to join us for the round, even though she had never properly played golf. Caleb joked that she would probably destroy the grass, and everyone laughed, including Hannah. But I noticed she kept glancing at me. On the second hole, Hannah tried her first real swing. The club struck the ground several inches before the ball, sending a tiny piece of grass flying. She looked embarrassed and immediately apologized. I told her there was nothing to apologize for. Golf was supposed to be frustrating, otherwise everyone would play it perfectly. She smiled. But after a few more attempts, she quietly stepped away from the group. I found her near a bench overlooking the fairway, staring at the club in her hands. Then she finally said something that caught me completely off guard. She asked me if I would teach her, not just that day, but properly. She said she wanted to learn because she needed something that belonged only to her again. Something that didn't remind her of the job she lost or the relationship that ended. I agreed, and over the next several weeks, Saturday mornings became our little tradition. I taught her how to hold the club, how to breathe before a swing, how to accept a bad shot without letting it ruin the next one. But slowly, I realized I wasn't really teaching Hannah golf. I was teaching her patience with herself. What surprised me most was how much she taught me in return. I had spent years pretending I was perfectly fine after my father passed away. I rarely talked about him because every memory seemed to carry a little pain. One afternoon, Hannah noticed an old golf ball engraved with my father's initials tucked inside my bag. She didn't ask a dozen questions. She simply said that maybe remembering someone didn't always have to hurt forever. That sentence stayed with me. A few days later, I finally called my mother and talked about Dad for the first time in months. Hannah never knew how much that conversation meant to me. Her own healing had quietly helped me begin mine. Then came the day she finally hit the ball cleanly. It flew across the fairway, straight and beautiful, before landing near the edge of the green. Hannah froze for a second, staring at it as if she couldn't believe she had done it. Then she laughed, and I saw the woman who had been buried underneath all that sadness return for the first time. Caleb was watching from the cart, smiling proudly. He later told me that his sister had started changing since those Saturday lessons. She was applying for new jobs, going back to church, calling old friends, and slowly rebuilding her confidence. But there was one thing none of us expected. A month later, Hannah received an offer from a rehabilitation center in Raleigh, North Carolina. It was the kind of opportunity she had once dreamed about, but she was terrified of leaving home again. On her final morning at the golf course before moving, she handed me a small wooden box. Inside was the golf ball from her very first successful shot. She had written the date on it. She told me she wanted me to keep it because I had taught her how to swing a club, but she had learned something much bigger. A bad chapter doesn't mean the whole story is ruined. I stood there holding that little ball, realizing that sometimes people enter our lives needing help, only to become the reason we find our own strength again. Hannah moved to Raleigh, and Caleb and I continued our Saturday rounds. But the course never felt quite the same without her laughter somewhere nearby. Every few weeks, she sent us pictures of her progress, and eventually, she told us she had started teaching beginner golf lessons to patients at the rehabilitation center who needed a gentle way to rebuild confidence. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by liking the video, sharing it with someone who may be facing a difficult season, and subscribing for more stories about hope, kindness, and second chances. And before the story ends, I want to ask you something personally. Have you ever met someone who helped you heal without even realizing how much you needed them? Leave a comment and share your experience. Someone reading it today might realize they aren't alone. Years later, whenever I see that little wooden box on my shelf, I remember Hannah standing on that first tee, nervous and uncertain, believing she had simply come to learn golf. But she taught me something I will never forget. Sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from winning. They come from showing up when life has knocked you down, accepting a helping hand, and having the courage to take one more swing. And sometimes, the person you think you're teaching is actually the person God placed in your path to teach you how to begin again.